Okay, I think it's time to fire up Houdini for the first time. First of all, what is that? Maybe. Okay. Okay. First of all, welcome back to this beginner tutorial of Houdini. Today we want to tackle the interface and its core functionalities. And as a UX designer, I might tell you, boy oh boy, it's not pretty. But I learned to love it, and so will you. Let's jump right in. The interface is divided into several key panels. The viewport, this is where your 3D scene will be visualized. The network editor is basically the heart of Houdini's procedural workflow. It's where you create and connect nodes to build your scene. Once you select a node, you will see all its adjustable settings inside the parameters panel. This is where you tweak values to control the behavior of your nodes. The shelf tools are shortcuts to common tools and operations. For example, you can create geometry, light, or cameras with a single click. Last but not least, the timeline. You can find everything animation or time-dependent related things in here, like keyframes or the playback for your simulations. But as you can see, there's so much more going on. So before we jump right into it, I want to erase as much pain and confusion as possible. So let's start by setting up a simple and straightforward interface. Therefore, we start by closing everything that we don't need. I really just want to focus on the things that are really necessary and that I like to work with. For example, for my taste, this network view is the core of Houdini. So I want to give this as much room as possible. And let's say we divide our screen more or less in the middle to have a nice little preview here on the left side, and on the right side we will get our node trees. But now my parameters are gone, and they are also essential for me to make all the adjustments for each and every node. We could theoretically just press the letter P on the keyboard to get this kind of temporarily little panel here that floats on top of the node network. This can help, but what I usually do is I come in here under this little triangle and I say split pane left and right. And now you see I got 2 times the same network view. This can be also quite handy if you want to dive into different kind of networks. So you can pin one with this little pin icon here and it will always stay open. And then you could, for example, can compare node trees. Or what I want to also do is under the plus icon, I come in here and I select parameters. So now I splitted my right section of the screen into 2 areas, my node and its parameters. So this allows me to grow my node tree from top to bottom and see all the information I need on the right side. The left side, and I know we haven't tackled this yet, I also want to close a lot of this stuff here, but I want to come back to this geometry spreadsheet in a moment. But let's close it for now here. And we basically do the same like over on the right side. We come to this little drop-down icon here, but this time we choose split pane top to bottom. This will divide the view into this kind of structure. And let me just bring this down. And instead of another scene view down here, what I want to do is come into the new pane tab and I want to come to inspectors and select geometry spreadsheet. And I close the scene view. Let's very briefly talk about this. It will become very, very handy in later tutorials, but just so you have seen it already, the geometry spreadsheet is basically this huge table. In this case, it's quite a simple one, which shows us all the points this kind of box consists of and shows us where these points are in 3D space. But we come back to this later. So let's get this out of the way as much as we can. And This is basically my preferred interface. If you want to save your interface, you come to the desktop and you say save current desktop as. If you click this, you can name it however you like. I name it FIFO, and then you click save. And then you can come in here and you will find your desktop in this list. So if I click FIFO, yeah, nothing happens because it's the same layout. To not struggle all the time, you basically start up Houdini and you need to switch your desktop to your preferred one. You can set up the default startup desktop. You can do this under the Houdini settings and preferences. And under here, you have the startup desktop. You can just set this to whatever you like. You can even adjust the interface scale if you want. Hit accept, and the next time you fire up Houdini, it will start with this layout. Okay, let's continue our tour of the interface. I think the most important part that we need to tackle today is our kind of viewport area. You see in here, it has all kinds of different tools and helpers, and let's talk about them for now. Let's start by tackling the elements here on the left side. We will have our selecting tool, move tool, rotate tool, and scale tool. You see the respective shortcuts at the end. So the move tool is T on the keyboard. Of course, we need to select the object. So T is the move tool, R is the rotate, and E is the scale. Then we have here our handle option, show handle, which basically combines all these elements into one. This can also be reached via the enter shortcut. Down here we have all kind of snapping options. At the bottom, this camera view. Once you enter the camera view, your mouse will become this little hand, and with a left click you can just rotate. So left click and hold around the object. With middle mouse, you can pan the viewport, and with a right click, you can zoom in and out of the viewport. Once you, let's say we press enter again, and we're in this handle view. Of course, we need to select our object to see the handle of it. We cannot navigate like this. So what I usually do, and here on the Mac, I click the option key, and this will temporarily put me into this view mode, so I don't need to enter it. By the way, I can enter it with escape. But we are now in this handle mode, and I hold the option key, and then I again have access to the left mouse, middle mouse, and right mouse interactions to navigate my viewport. There's one more thing regarding this kind of handle tool. This usually needs to be selected for some nodes to work. So we just jump ahead a little bit. I make a double click on this container and we jump inside, and you see this little scene that I've prepared is basically just a box, and I gave it some normals. But what I just mentioned, for example, the node poly draw, see here, I click it and you see there's nothing happening. There's not really controls here. Could click here, but I don't really see anything. That's why we need to come over the viewport and hit enter. We need to have this handle selected in order to access all the functionalities of this node, so we can toggle between the interface, and this is another part. Basically, you will get also more and more options up here in regard of your selected node. Okay, but so far so good. Let's tackle the select tool. Once I click on it, I have access to all our different 3D elements, points, like here, edges, like here, or faces, like here, and all kind of selecting methods, like a lasso, where I can just paint over the viewport, or what I think is very, very useful is this just visible geometry. So once I click this and I go over, you see the back faces won't be selected because I just see these 3 faces currently. Once I turn it off and I do the same thing again, I selected the entire object. Okay, but let's not get too much into detail right now. We shift our focus to the elements here on the right hand side of the viewport. In the top, you can toggle off and on the grid this lock icon, and I will jump up 1 level in here. This I will do with the shortcut U to jump out of the node. And what this lock means is it will lock your view to the camera. So let me put down a camera real quick, like this. And by the way, this node menu you can open with the tab key. So I have the camera selected, and in the top right corner of the viewport you have these 2 drop downs. The right drop down is basically for your cameras. So let's select the camera we just created, and you will see we have these red bars. This means our camera is locked to the viewport. So it doesn't matter which operation we are doing. Let's zoom out a bit. Let's go up here, maybe. The camera will move with our viewport. Once I uncheck this, I can zoom out further and you see our camera will stay where we left it. We can every time jump back in, lock it again, adjust the angle, and basically leave it again. Something else what's super cool for the cameras, again, if I click now the handle, you will gain access to all the transformations regarding your camera. A nice little trick here is once you hit Z on the keyboard, you will enter this kind of focus mode where this little cube here in the middle is your focus point, and the 2 triangles, the one now went a bit off frame, is down here, will determine like the depth of field, like this kind of focal plane, as it called, like this. Like this area will appear sharp in the render once you have the depth of field, and everything from this point of view will be completely blurry. A good rule of thumb is like you put it in the middle of your objects that you want to have in focus if you want to render with depth of field. Okay, let's come back here. Underneath you have different kind of viewing options, so you can basically turn off all lighting. You'll have like a shaded viewport. You can toggle on more lights. That just makes sense once we have lights in the scene, but you can play around with them. I usually leave it at the standard. Down here, and therefore I will jump back into our geometry, you have different kind of options to enhance the readability of things in your viewport. For example, you can toggle on this point view, and this will highlight all points in your scene with like a little blue indicator. You can view different kind of things like point normals, point velocity, point numbers. You can, for example, I created here primitive normal. So once I click on it, you see all those normals that stand on top of the face. Let me turn everything off. And at the bottom here, you find this info icon. Once you do a right click on it, you find this little entry here, geometry information. And once you click always on, you will see this detailed information of your geometry. So this little icon down here with the AI inside this window will open up the display options. So I'll get them over here. And for example, under the guides, you could do things like, once we have the point markers highlighted here, can find it also in here, and we can, for example, scale it up to 8 and make them even more prominent. This is something that you like. For this kind of normals, sometimes they can be very, very small, so you can scale them in here as well. So in here you have access to all these kind of visualizers. What I usually use is this background tab, and in here you can change the color scheme of your viewport, for example, to a gray, to a dark gray, or to the light. Okay, let's close this for now and let's continue with our tour Up here, I briefly mentioned these two drop downs. The left drop down is to really toggle between different kind of viewports. You can have access to the top viewport or to the front viewport, and this can become a little bit tedious to always need to click 3 times to change those viewports. So on here you also see the kind of numbers you can press to get to the respective viewport. So it would be 1, it would be 2, 3, 4, and 5 for the UV viewport. Back to 1. Let's say we really got lost in the world space here and we cannot find our object anymore, and we even toggled off the grid so we don't have any clue where we are in space. Spacebar F to jump to a selected object. In this case, that's the point I just selected before. Or if it's like this entire box and we go over here and I hit spacebar F, I will jump to the box. This is basically F for frame selection. And once I'm really confused and I want to just go home, I press spacebar H, and this will try to put all of my objects, you see my camera here and my box up here, in the viewport so I can have a good overview. Yeah, this basically concludes our first tour of the interface, and in the next video I would say we make a deep dive into the nodes. If you found this tutorial helpful, you know the drill. Please leave a like, subscribe, and we will see each other in the next one. Cheers.